Partners of sleeptalkers or sleepwalkers, what gems have you to share? We were freshly married and living overseas. My husband hadn't had much sleep the nights before, which usually enhances any sleep talking. It was hot in our room. My husband mumbled something which I didn't quite catch. I asked him to repeat it. He got up, opened the bedroom window, and said very pointedly, "Airflow, bitch!" Then laid back down, completely asleep. Now, my husband has never, not once, ever called me a name or even raised his voice to me, so this is particularly hilarious. Also, this happened before Breaking Bad was a big thing, so maybe my husband is the original Jesse Pinkman. Except without all the meth and mayhem, of course. My husband and I got married just 3 months ago, and I found out he's a notorious sleep talker. Some nights he would roll over to me, kiss me full on the mouth, tell me he loves me, then plonk right back on his pillow and start snoring again. This actually happens regularly. Much to my delight, LOL. Other nights he would blurt out things like how he would install a new server at the sheriff's office, or there's a snake on his palm, and when I asked what it's doing, he answered that it's coding something. I now enjoy staying up late, and am a proud owner of several recordings of my husband's sleep talkings. Recently, I got him answering math questions, and it tickled me silly how he got them all correct. My boyfriend once blurted out, "You're putting bread in my ears" in his sleep, mumbled something unintelligible, and then followed up with, "And I'm becoming a sandwich." Still makes me laugh whenever I remember. Fantastic sleep songs with lyrics which are utterly bizarre. My two absolute favorites have been, "Oh, whoa, whoa, it's a corner cat. Obey my rules and you'll always be a country cowboy," repeated about 5 times and finished with a, "Yeah, corner cat is amazing." That might make it into a song of mine. That was literally it as well, like a jingle from a TV advert. No context, warning, or other words or lyrics whatsoever. Absolutely incredible. I'm the sleep talker. A long while back, my fiance was working a job where she didn't get home until after midnight. She came home one night and was leaning over the table on my side of the bed. She swears up and down that I looked up at her, smacked her on the top of the head, and when she asked what the hell that I told her, I was checking to see if she was a ghost. Now, I do remember having a dream like this, but in my dream, my hand did go through her head, proving she was a ghost. I had a dream that my girlfriend was biting my neck playfully. I didn't want that, so I push her gently off and tell her to stop. Soon after, I woke up and she was holding her eye and crying. She says I just pushed her, sat upright, and straight punched her in the face. She said she wasn't too hurt, but was extremely confused. I had a girlfriend do that to me. I was in bed playing a game on my laptop with headphones. She sat up, looked at me, punched me right in the face, then went back to bed. Apparently, I cheated on her in her dream and deserved getting hit. I have had funnier experiences than this one, but cannot remember exactly what was said. Most recently though, my boyfriend scoots over to me to big spoon, little spoon, and I snuggle in thinking that's all it was. Then he gets real close to my ear and whispers, "Just so you know, there's something in the closet, like a cartoon turtle." I did my best not to bust out laughing and just said, "Okay, honey." When he woke up, he had no memory of it whatsoever, of course. Roommate freshman year of college was a sleepwalker, sleep talker. We were in the freshman dorms. Small little room. I woke up one night and saw him sitting straight up on the side of the bed just staring at me, eyes fully open, just talking gibberish about golf. He was going on about Phil Mickelson or some shit. Have to be honest, it was creepy as all hell because he was staring directly into my eyes. Next morning, I told him about it, and he just laughed and said, "Sorry, I tend to do that from time to time." A friend who was next to my room in a high school dorm used to sleepwalk. He also used to sleep earlier than the rest of the floor. So one night, around midnight, we all were up and talking in my room. Except him, he'd gone to sleep. We were kind of worried that the dorm advisor would cut our chill session and tell us to go to sleep. Suddenly, we hear someone banging on the door of the room. I get up to go open it, and as soon as I turn the handle, the door comes flying towards me. I was knocked back into a table, and standing there was my sleepwalking friend. He says, "Where is the secret of the time, component placement?" And without waiting for an answer, walks back to his room, climbs into his bunk bed top, and goes to sleep. Needless to say, we were all surprised, but being teenagers, we never let him forget it. It became a running joke in the school. He got up, Went into the kitchen and ate one bite of a mini pecan pie. No fork, just a straight bite, then apparently remembered he hates pecan pie and left it stacked neatly on the little box. Another time, he sat up and stared straight ahead at the wall, didn't respond to me asking what was wrong. He stood up, walked into the wall, then stood there like he was contemplating the barrier. He just backed up exactly as he came, sat down, and swung back into bed like nothing happened. That was creepy. I was in my brother's room watching TV with him, and he ended up falling asleep. He mumbled something about Arizona, and when I asked what he said, he didn't respond. Then a few minutes later, he sits up, squints his eyes, and just scans the room back and forth. I asked if he was okay, and he laid back down and went back to sleep. I still don't know what he was scanning the room for, but it creeped me out. My aunt likes to tell the story about her and my cousin sharing a hotel room one time. My aunt woke up having to pee and found my cousin sitting up in bed with her arms folded across her abdomen, kind of rocking back and forth and giggling quietly. When my aunt asked her what she was doing, my cousin said, "I'm holding a baby, and it has an adult smile." I found this story deeply unsettling. He started shouting that he couldn't feel his left arm. I pointed out he was pinching his pillow, not his arm. He then freaked out that he had lost his arm. I pointed out his arm was under his pillow. He said okay and started snoring. It took me another hour to get back to sleep. He didn't wake up at all. Edit. Blimey, went to bed and this went crazy overnight. Thanks to those who reached out in concern to check on his health. He participated in a sleep study, and it was found to be stress-related. Luckily, not sleep apnea. Also, he did wake up, just not until morning. Didn't realize I'd phrased it in such a way that people thought he died. My mom sleepwalks sometimes. When she was in the middle of her residency, she came into my room in the middle of the night and sharply asked, "Did you give my patient her dose of medication? Like I asked you to 15 minutes ago?" I groggily replied, "Who? What?" She just huffed and said, "Well, I guess that answers my question," before turning around and leaving, without closing the door, of course. She didn't remember a thing about it the next morning. What is it with moms never closing bedroom doors? It transcends age, race, location, and all other demographics imaginable. If you're a mom, bedroom doors do not close. It is the way. To the moms reading this, be the change. I always close the doors, but my wife never does. Our daughter says she always knows who's been where because of this fact. I'd be the king of Monaco. My wife said this one night out of nowhere. The funniest part was her tone of voice, proud and assertive, like she was really sure of her claim to the throne. Anyway, the joke's on her. Monaco is a principality. My brother did that in the middle of the night. He would get up, go into the living room, say some nonsense shit to our parents, and go back to bed. It was actually pretty creepy the first times because he was like, "They are in the walls. They are." I do this too, but I usually wake up as the sentence is coming out of my mouth and realize the convo I'm replying to wasn't real. Then I yell, "Never mind," and run away in shame. My one claim to sleep talking fame is that as I was waking up, I was talking in my dream. So my partner heard me say, out of nowhere, "What about like a really tall giraffe?" I remember saying it. I have no memory of what problem I was facing that I thought might be solved by a really tall giraffe. Honestly, what situation isn't improved by a really tall giraffe? My wife started screaming one night that she was lost in the local grocery store, and that no matter where she went, she couldn't find her way out. I asked her, has she tried checking out at the cash registers? She then looked at me and said in her most sincere voice, "That's why you are the smartest person I know." And she rolled over and fell back asleep. I'm the sleep talker here. Got this from my wife the next morning. Me. Sits bolt upright, they're coming. Everything's ready. Wife. Sleepily. Huh? Me. They're coming. Everything's ready. Wife. They're coming. Me. Wife. But everything's ready? Me. Yes. Wife. Sounds like we're okay then. Me. Comically flops back down and instantly goes back to sleep. I really like the flow of this conversation, and I know that this is completely unrelated, but the reason it stands out to me is because this is exactly how you're supposed to respond to someone who's delusional or someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia. There's no reason to challenge what they say or to make them explain themselves or to say they're wrong. Just say something calming to reassure them, but everything's ready. Sounds like we're okay then. If you were speaking to someone with severe delusions or advanced aging issues, this would be textbook and beautifully done. Edit. Since people are noticing this, I thought I would add that after giving it some thought, you don't have to be extremely delusional for this flow of conversation to work well and be very helpful. I experience mild delusion when my mania increases to psychosis. I have bipolar 2. When it's at its absolute worst, I might have a thought like, oh, it's a beautiful day outside today. It must have been because of that song I listened to earlier. I'm mildly assuming my taste in music has directed the weather for the day. If I made a comment about that out loud and someone said to me, "That's impossible and you're delusional," it would make me feel highly embarrassed and also make me question reality for a moment, which is extremely uncomfortable and unsettling, and completely unnecessary unless I'm about to do something stupid. Not a partner, but in military training in school, I often took the night shift for guard duty. The amount of sleepwalkers and talkers is way fucking higher than I expected. It is straight creepy when you have to walk down the halls with a covered flashlight listening to big-ass grown men mumbling and lashing out in their sleep. What takes the cake, though, is often sleepwalkers will just kinda stop randomly. So you'll be walking along in the pitch black darkness, and suddenly, there's just a fucking dude standing there. Eyes generally closed, or worse, open, just kinda listing to the side or leaning against a bedpost or wall. After I'd suppress all the swear words I was about to yell out, nothing much to do but kinda prod them along back to their bed. For all the randomness that is being part of the military, I really didn't expect one of my jobs to be gently tucking my fellow soldiers back into their beds. When I was a child about 5 years old, I was sleeping in my parents' bed for some reason, probably a storm. Mom was awake, Dad and I were asleep. Suddenly, my father and I have this cross-sleep conversation while my mom lays between us, quietly freaked out. "Dad, you better not take my toys," I mutter angrily. "Okay, I won't," my father responds. "Don't even touch them." "Okay." Not particularly scintillating conversation, but notable for the fact that we're both asleep and still responding to each other. It was like making Alexa and Siri talk to each other LOL. I remember one night Mom and I sat in the hallway giggling because my brother and Dad were having a sleep conversation in different rooms. Dad, "Do you sell steel here?" Brother, "Can I help you, Dad?" Dad, "I want to buy some steel." Brother, "What?" Dad, "How much is the steel?" My grandfather was a hard sleep talker. My grandmother has a funny story. One day my grandfather, while sleeping, was saying, "Do I punch this asshole?" My grandmother replayed, "Yeah, punch him." Then my grandfather in his sleep punched her. I woke up one night when my husband started flailing around in the bed. It shocked me and I shouted, "What's wrong?" Then he punched me in the face. I yelled out and started crying. Then he woke up and shouted, "What's wrong?" He dreamt he was being chased and then turned round and punched them. My mom, who is in her 80s, often falls asleep in her chair while I'm visiting her. She sleep eats. Not real food, but she goes through the motions of holding a plate and bringing food to her mouth. It's hilarious watching her. I asked her once if it was nice, and she said yes, it's very tasty. Edit to thank folks for the awards. Heck yes. Please take a seat. My wife was an avid sleep talker for a long time, and her midnight announcements range from simple single words to elaborate speeches. The ones that really stand out to me are waking up in the middle of the night to her suddenly sitting violently up in bed, throwing back the covers and screaming, "Tarantula!" That will make you very awake very quickly. Whispering my name repeatedly, which woke me up so she could share in a hushed, cautious voice, "There is an alligator in here." When I expressed my concern, playing along, she told me, still whispering, that it's okay, it has been here before. But my all-time favorite was when, from her perspective, as she later explained, she was dreaming that I was playfully sneaking up on her, and she saw me and was calling me on it. From my perspective, my wife sat up in the middle of the night, starting into the darkest corner of the room, and said repeatedly in a soft, sing-song voice, "I see you." My flipping blood froze. TLDR. My wife is terrifying. This actually happened last night. My fiance started talking to me like we had never met before, and after a minute I realized that she was dreaming about our first date. It was really wholesome, and I was surprised at how much detail she remembers. My mom used to wake me up for school because I'd sleep through my alarms. She has a bunch of stories about weird shit I've said to her right before waking. "He's not here, check down the street. Just put it on the roof and it'll blow away." My mom has to do this with my younger brother, and most recently, he sat up while still asleep, started moving his arms really quickly as though running and said, "I am the fastest man alive, Barry Allen." My girl woke up one night and said, "Did you find your rocks?" And I asked her what she was talking about, and she said, "I don't know, I'm just trying to make conversation," and promptly went back to sleep. She has no recollection of this. One night, my boyfriend woke me up in the middle of the night, tapping me on my shoulder. He put his finger on his mouth, whispered "shush" to me, then pointed at the door and told me, "I can hear something, don't move." Predictably, I nearly shit my pants. All the worst possible scenarios crossed my mind, and the moment of silence after he shushed me felt like hours. Then, he started waving his hands and talking about Tetris, the twirlies, IDK, and making sure we don't align. And that's how I learnt my boyfriend talks in his sleep. Husband woke up in the morning and told me about a crazy dream he had. We were hosting a party and he was serving cookies. He was upset that nobody was eating them. When we went downstairs, we discovered a full plate of cookies sitting on our dining table. Years ago, my wife was mumbling in her sleep and seemed a bit upset. I wanted to comfort her without waking her up too much. So I said, "Honey, you're fine. Do you know where you are?" She slugged me in the arm and said, "I'm in place where punch buggies are seen first." She then rolled over and muttered to herself, "Chugga, chugga, chugga, buggy," and went back to sleep. She didn't remember a thing the next morning. No gems, just horrors. I sleepwalk once in a while, but apparently when I was a toddler, I used to sleepwalk, cry and say she's following me, or just try to leave the house by myself. Nowadays, if it happens, I wake up looking at my reflection in the mirror in the dark. When that happens, it fucking creeps me out so I won't sleep the rest of the night. Edit 1. Why don't I move or cover the mirror? The first time it happened, I covered the mirror, but with my morning rushes to work, I pull the cloth down to get ready, and then cover it when I reach home. I've had and still have peaceful nights of sleep, with dimmed lights on, so eventually I'd skip on covering mirror and focused more, not being afraid of the dark. When I least expect it, I catch myself waking up to the mirror with a gentle head bump / nod, get spooked at the incident, rinse and repeat with a blanket cover. I generally have good nights of sleep. These sleepwalks are very rare, so I'm more concerned about my fear of sleeping in the dark. I can't do it. I need a dimmed light for bedtime. Edit 2. Is it this particular mirror in my room? Yes, it's always this mirror, but maybe I haven't had enough sleepovers to have another sleepwalking state elsewhere. I think it's just my subconscious self remembering how I like the mirror during the daytime to get ready, do my hair, makeup, try clothes, etc. I live in a shared flat, so I can only leave it in my room. It's a cheap full-length mirror, and anyway, these sleepwalks are so rare. Recent episodes has made me want to leave the mirror outside my room, but then again, I don't want to weird out my flatmates by describing them this particular sleeping habit. Not a partner, but 1 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call from my friend in the next street. My 6-year-old daughter had just knocked on her door and then walked in mumbling about not being able to do her sums. I raced up there and walked home with her, put her back to bed, and she didn't wake up or remember a thing the next day. By the next night, our house was like Fort Knox. Reminds me of my sleepwalking incident. When I was that age, my babysitter was out walking with her boyfriend at 10 p.m. and found me curled up, sleeping on the sidewalk a block away from our house. They picked me up and brought me home, and apparently I had turned on every light as I left. Fort Knox? After that incident, my dad had to climb through the kitchen window if he had to work late. All the doors had latches out of my reach. When my girlfriend and I started dating, she told me that she's been told she talks in her sleep from time to time, and unfortunately, has nightmares fairly often. One of the first nights we spent together, she wakes up at 2 a.m. and sits up super fast. It wakes me up and I look over only to hear her quickly say, "Pizza, order a pizza," then lie back down and start snoring within a minute. God, I love that woman, LMAO. My wife will tell me the next day when I do this. Her favorite story to tell is that she woke up in the middle of the night to find me slowly walking out of our bedroom. Wife, are you okay? What are you doing? Me, there's somebody downstairs in the kitchen unrolling the tinfoil. Wife, okay, what's your plan? Me, I'm going to stop them. Wife, shall we get a bit more sleep than both go down together? Me, okay. And I went back to bed. Subsequent investigations found a small plastic bag on the floor, near my head, being rustled by the movement of the curtain, the window being open. My boyfriend woke me up the other day by gently putting his fingers in my mouth, and I kept moving my head out of the way until eventually I was like, "Can you stop that?" He then sounded genuinely upset and asked why I woke him up as he was having a really nice dream about feeding a deer. Brilliant. My boyfriend is bilingual, and sometimes I catch him sleep talking in Punjabi. I've never heard him sleep talking in English. He also once punched me in the middle of my spine while fully asleep. When he woke up, he claims in his dream he was giving him mum CPR. He sometimes also suffers from night terrors. It happened often when we first started dating, almost every time he slept or napped, but it hasn't happened for probably over a year. It happened like 2 nights ago where he just started screaming like a banshee in his sleep. It was wild and terrifying. I'm the sleep talker. I don't remember any of this, but my boyfriend said I did this to him. In the middle of the night, I hit my boyfriend's ass hard with my knee. Obviously, he was pretty upset. He sat up to stretch, and I said, "I'll stretch too." Did stretches and laid back down. Then, while making full eye contact with him, I grabbed the blanket and threw it off of him, then rolled over and started snoring immediately. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.